Hello, dear listeners. Welcome back to Timeless Romance Tales. Before we begin, don't forget to like this video and subscribe for more dark aristocratic romance, slow-burning intimacy, and stories where closeness is earned, not demanded. Now let's begin. The Duke of Caldermere collapsed just as the sun broke the horizon. It was not dramatic. There was no cry for help, no grand gesture. One moment he stood at the tall windows of the East Gallery, hands braced against the stone as he watched dawn spill across the estate. The next, his knees buckled. The sound his body made when it struck the marble floor was dull, final, terrifying. Margaret Hale heard it from the corridor. She froze, heartbeat stuttering, then ran. "Your Grace." She reached him seconds later, skirts gathered, breath sharp in her lungs. Duke Rowan Calder lay on his side. One hand curled against his chest, skin ashen, eyes half-lidded but unfocused. "Rowan," she said without thinking. She caught herself at once. Too familiar. But he didn't respond. Margaret dropped to her knees beside him, pressing two fingers to his neck. His pulse was there, strong but uneven. His skin burned beneath her touch. "Someone," she shouted. "Fetch the physician now." Footsteps thundered. Voices rose. But Margaret stayed where she was, steadying his head, keeping him still, anchoring him to the present as his breath came shallow and uneven. "Stay with me," she murmured, softer now. "Just stay." By mid-morning the east wing was sealed. Servants whispered. Guards stood watch. The physician came and went twice, leaving behind bitter tonics and sharper instructions. "Exhaustion," he declared. "Fever brought on by prolonged strain." He should not have been standing at all. Margaret stood at the foot of the bed, hands folded tightly, listening. "He must not be left alone," the physician continued. "If he wakes disoriented, he may attempt to rise. That could be dangerous." The steward frowned. "We'll assign guards." "No," the physician interrupted. His gaze shifted to Margaret. "He needs someone who will stay close. Someone calm. Someone he recognizes." The room stilled. Margaret felt every eye turn toward her. "I'm only a secretary," she said quietly. "You're the only one he allowed near him these past weeks," the physician replied. "And the only one he didn't dismiss." The steward hesitated, then nodded. "You'll remain." Margaret swallowed. "Until when?" "Until he wakes," the physician said. "And stabilizes." The door closed behind them. Margaret was alone with the Duke. She had worked for Rowan Calder for nearly a year. Not as a companion, not as a guest, as a necessity. She organized his correspondence, tracked his estate accounts, filtered visitors when his patience ran thin, which was often. The Duke of Caldermere was known for his discipline, his isolation, his refusal to rely on anyone, except quietly her. He trusted her memory, her steadiness, her refusal to flinch when he snapped or withdrew. But this was different. Margaret moved closer to the bed, sitting carefully in the chair beside it. She adjusted the blanket, mindful of the heat radiating from him. His face in sleep was stripped of its armor. The sharp lines softened. The tension in his jaw eased. He looked younger, vulnerable in a way she had never seen. She rested her hands in her lap and waited. Rowan did not wake easily. He stirred, murmured incoherently, then sank back into restless sleep, his brow furrowed, breath hitching as though chased by dreams he couldn't outrun. Margaret rose, dampened a cloth, and pressed it gently to his forehead. He flinched. "Easy," she whispered. "I'm here." His hand twitched, fingers brushing her wrist. She froze. Then he held on. Not tightly, not deliberately, but enough. Margaret swallowed hard and stayed still, allowing the contact. His skin was hot. His grip weak, but insistent, as though even unconscious. He refused to be alone. "You're safe," she murmured. "I won't go." The words surprised her as much as they soothed him. Hours passed. Sunlight shifted across the floor. The manor moved on around them. Margaret did not. She fed him water when his lips parted, cooled his skin, kept time by his breathing. At dusk his eyes finally opened, unfocused, searching. "Maggie," he rasped. Her heart skipped. Yes, she said softly. I'm here. His gaze sharpened slowly, recognition settling like relief. You didn't leave. No. You should have. She shook her head. I was ordered to stay. A faint smile ghosted across his mouth. Good. He tried to rise. Margaret stood at once, pressing a hand to his shoulder. No. Don't. I need to. You collapsed, she said firmly. You're not standing. His jaw tightened. I don't need. You do, she interrupted gently. And that's allowed. He stared at her, breath shallow, pride warring with exhaustion. Finally, he sank back against the pillows. You're too calm, he murmured. I had to be, she replied. For both of us. His gaze lingered on her face. You look tired. She smiled faintly. I didn't sleep. Why? Because you didn't. Something in his eyes shifted. Night returned. The fever ebbed but did not vanish. Rowan drifted in and out of awareness, more lucid now, more present, and more aware of her. You shouldn't sit so close, he murmured at one point. Margaret didn't move. I need to reach you quickly if you fall. Or if I don't want to be alone. She met his gaze. That too. Silence stretched. You know, he said quietly. Most people leave when I'm like this. Like what? Unuseful, he replied. The word cut. You're not unuseful, Margaret said. You're human. He exhaled slowly. I don't like that. I know. You're not afraid of me. She shook her head. I'm afraid for you. That earned her a look, sharp, surprised, unguarded. You stay, he said, more statement than request. Yes. And you don't ask for anything. No. His fingers brushed hers again, deliberate this time. Why? Margaret hesitated. Because you never asked me to be anything other than what I am. His hand stilled. By the second dawn, the fever broke. The physician returned, nodded in approval, and declared the Duke out of danger. You may leave him now, he told Margaret. Rowan's head snapped toward her. No, he said hoarsely. The physician paused. Your Grace. She stays, Rowan repeated. The physician glanced between them, then shrugged. As you wish. When they were alone again, Rowan spoke quietly. You weren't meant to see me like this. No, Margaret agreed. But I did. And you didn't turn away. No. He shifted, winced slightly. You saw weakness, he said. And you didn't use it. She leaned closer, voice low. Because it wasn't something to use. His gaze softened. Stay tonight, he said. Not as duty. Margaret held his eyes. As choice, she replied. He nodded once. That night was different. The fear was gone. The urgency, too. Margaret sat beside him, close enough that their shoulders touched. When he reached for her hand, she didn't hesitate. They didn't speak much. They didn't need to. Rowan slept. Deeply. And Margaret stayed awake. Not because she was ordered to, but because leaving no longer made sense. At dawn, when he woke rested for the first time in weeks, he turned to her. You stayed. Yes. Good, he said softly. Not command. Not claim. Relief. And as the light spilled into the room, Margaret realized something irreversible had begun. Not in collapse, but in the quiet decision to remain. Because sometimes love does not arrive with passion. Sometimes it arrives when someone falls. And someone else stays. The days that followed settled into a strange, quiet rhythm. Rowan did not return to his duties immediately. The physician forbade it, and for once the Duke obeyed. Messages piled on the desk untouched. Requests went unanswered. The estate learned to move more slowly, as though the house itself had been instructed to breathe. Margaret remained. At first, officially, tasked with reading correspondence aloud, tracking decisions he was too weak to make. Later, less so. She stayed because he asked her to sit. Because he slept better when he could hear her moving nearby. Because the space beside him had grown accustomed to her presence. You hover, he remarked one afternoon. She did not look up from the ledger. You collapse. A pause. Then quietly, fair. His strength returned gradually. Each morning he sat up longer. Each afternoon he walked farther, first to the window, then across the room, then finally into the gallery where he had fallen. Margaret watched him there one evening, standing exactly where he had collapsed days before, hands braced against the stone. "You don't have to prove anything," she said softly. He glanced over his shoulder. "I wasn't. You came back to this spot." "Yes." "Why?" He considered. "Because it frightened me." She stepped closer, standing beside him instead of behind. "It doesn't anymore." "No," he admitted. "Because you were here when it happened." The truth of that settled between them. The servants noticed. Not the closeness, nothing so obvious, but the change. The Duke no longer dismissed people with a look. He ate regularly. He slept. And Margaret, once invisible, was now quietly deferred to. Her word carried weight. Her presence was expected. One evening, after Rowan dismissed the last steward, he turned to her. "They listen to you." She shrugged. "You allow it?" "Yes," he said. "I do." She hesitated, then asked, "Why?" "Because," he replied, "you don't seek power from it." She met his gaze. "And you don't fear sharing it." Something in his expression softened again, this time without surprise. The first time he reached for her deliberately, it was not dramatic. They were seated by the fire. Evening stretched long and quiet. Margaret had been reading aloud when his fingers brushed hers on the arm of the chair. She stopped reading. Neither of them moved. "You don't have to," she said gently. "I know," Rowan replied. The contact remained. Warm. Steady. "I've been alone a long time," he said. "I know. I don't know how to do this properly." She closed the book and turned toward him. "Neither do I." That was enough. He did not pull her closer. Did not rush. Instead, he rested his forehead briefly against her temple. A silent, grounding gesture that felt more intimate than a kiss. "Stay," he murmured. She stayed. Later, when the fire burned low and night pressed close against the windows, Rowan spoke again. "If you ever wish to leave," he said quietly, "I won't stop you." Margaret looked at him. "Is that what you want?" "No," he admitted. "But I won't trap you." She reached for his hand this time. "You didn't trap me when I stayed," she said. "You trusted me." His fingers tightened slightly around hers. "That may be the most dangerous thing I've ever done." She smiled faintly. "Then you survived it." The next morning, Margaret woke in the small sitting room adjoining his chambers, a blanket draped carefully over her shoulders. Rowan stood nearby, fully dressed, watching her wake with an expression she couldn't quite name. "You should have woken me," she said, sitting up. "I didn't want to," he replied. "You looked settled." She rose slowly. "And you?" He gestured to himself. "Alive." Annoyingly so. She laughed, soft, surprised. The sound seemed to catch him off guard. "I want you to stay," he said then. "Not as my secretary." Her breath hitched. "As what?" "As the person who saw me fall," he said. "And didn't leave." Silence stretched, not heavy but full. "I won't disappear into your life," she said carefully. "I won't exist only in the spaces you allow." "I wouldn't survive that," he replied. "And I wouldn't ask it." She searched his face. "Then," she said slowly, "we begin honestly." "Yes," he agreed. Slowly. They did. There was no announcement, no declaration, just shared mornings, shared decisions, shared silences that no longer felt empty. And one night, when Rowan's strength had fully returned, when the past no longer pressed so sharply, he kissed her. Not urgently, not as possession, but as recognition. Margaret rested her hands against his chest, steady and certain. "This isn't because you were weak," she said quietly. "No," he replied. "It's because I trusted you when I was." That was the truth. And in that truth, something unbreakable took root. Not born from power or fear or obligation, but from collapse. And the quiet choice to stay.